most of you know me, and my name is Helen Ingold. I'm the city clerk, and I thank you all for being with us tonight for this boards and commissions education session. I'm going to be speaking tonight on the subject of open meetings. We'll be covering agendas, email, the chair, facilitator role, parliamentary procedures, and briefly speak to minutes. I thank you all for being willing to serve our city on boards and commissions. We're recording this tonight so that future and current boards and commission members who can't be with us this evening can view it at a later time. So I do ask your cooperation to allow me to walk through the PowerPoint, and at some later point then we will definitely take questions at the end, but someone watching at a later time then can probably go from beginning to end. And for the benefit of you who will be doing it later, I would like to say that I would encourage you to make sure you stop on slide number 3 and the very last slide. Slide number 3 is the why we're doing this, and the very last slide are the 3 takeaways. So if you view this later briefly, please do that. And thank you for your patience, those of you who are with me tonight, while I add that little bit of instruction. Okay, this is slide number 3 that I mentioned earlier. Why? Why is it important for everybody who's on a board or commission who serves to understand open meetings, the basics of open meetings? And it's because it can cost the city money, okay? The statutes provide for, violating the Sunshine Law. If you're violating the Sunshine Law, you're violating the open meetings statutes. And this briefly states how much, you can be, the attorney's fees are on top of these fines. And in an extreme case, they're mentioned in the last sentence, an action could be overturned. So this is why we want you to take time to just know a little bit about this, because it can have quite serious consequences for the city if we knowingly or unknowingly violate the open meetings laws, or as some refer to it, Sunshine Law. Okay, this presentation includes lots of references to laws, and these are not legal opinions. These are not my legal opinions. I am not a lawyer. I am a master municipal clerk and a certified public manager, and I'm sharing resources and information with you that I have gained through my own education and experiences. Okay, let's start. This is from, you'll see there the webpage, AGO, Attorney General's Office. This is referring to public governmental bodies. And I think you probably all realize it, that you're part of a public governmental body. Being a member of a board or commission, may feel kind of like you're on another committee, like if you were at school or your church or just a group that you belong to that's of interest, but it's very different. And I'm going to be repeating this later because it's so important just to kind of understand how it all works. And by that, I mean the public has elected the mayor and the board of aldermen, the elected officials, and everybody thinks of them as the public governmental body. But in turn, the mayor has nominated all of you, and then the board has approved you to be a part of these boards and commissions. So each board and commission is a public governmental body. So that's really the emphasis of what I have here on this slide right now, that is saying you're part of one. And so it's part of the reason I've asked you to come here tonight, to emphasize that you are part of the public governmental body. You are subject to the Sunshine Law. Now, we'll touch upon this again later, but in this paragraph, you'll notice it includes telephone conferences, internet chat sessions, and as well as a few series of meetings, involving a quorum or less than a quorum. And all meetings must be posted 24 hours in advance. We're going to talk a little bit more later about email, but when I'm speaking of email, also think in terms of Facebook Messenger, texting, any communication means, okay, because they all would fall under, even though they're saying telephone, any electronic means is what they're talking about. And, I guess just to give you an example, a body can get together for a social group or a work task, like our beautification committee members dig flowers together. They're not holding a meeting. They're not discussing public business when they're planting flowers, okay? So that sort of thing's okay. The soiree we have every year to thank you and appreciation, it's social. It's fine if the members of the committee do anything social. That's not violating. It would be more an example of, let's say that the park board has something on their agenda and you really like it and you want to make sure that everybody votes yes. So you text messaged everybody, make sure you vote for that. That would be violating it because you would be influencing the public business before we actually got to the meeting. And we want our meetings to happen in public. Transparency is not a buzzword for the city of Crestwood. Transparency is a virtue, a value that we take very seriously, and that is to be in compliance with open meetings laws. So that's part of what we're going to start with here, is just to give you a view that you may or may not have of your role. Because when you were chosen to be a part of this, you took an oath and you raised your hand and said, I promise to follow the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the state of Missouri, and the charter and the ordinances of the city of Crestwood. And I shook your hand and you signed your name. And I think we all know how important it is when we take an oath that we understand what that oath means. So that's why we're here, is to just give you a few glimpses into open meetings and your responsibility as a member, if you see anything not being done correct, to bring it to someone's attention. And in your meetings, the appropriate person to bring it to would be your department head who works with you at your meetings. At the bottom of here, I put a little star and it says a commission or board does not have the power to generate subcommittees. There seems to be a little confusion about that after the 75th, which worked a little bit different. It had some special rules and it did have some what we call work groups. Work groups were not subcommittees, okay? The Board of Aldermen only holds that power, and any committee formed by a government body is subject to the laws discussing here. So if the beautification committee wanted to create a daisy committee, that daisy committee would have to notice their meetings and do all these things. So that's my point. We don't want to create subcommittees because we don't have the authority to, and B, we have to make sure everyone's following the requirements. And on the next slide. Okay, this is a slide, and I will provide this PowerPoint later, where you can go and look in our code. The first link up here is the E-code 360. That's the entire code, but I put the code section for each of your boards or commissions. While we're here, I just want to point out that Public Works Board, Fire Board, Park Board, Beautification Police Board, you all are advisory boards. So some of what I say may or may not apply, depending upon whether you're an advisory or a decision-making board. The administrative review bodies mentioned here, Planning and Zoning, Board of Adjustment, they make actual rulings and decisions, and they are decision-making bodies. So everything might not quite fit the same. And Civil Service Board, I know we have Annette on there. Thank you for joining us. That's its own animal, and that's why I have it listed last. You advisory boards meet routinely. If you go to the code section, and I ask you to go visit that later, because if you read it when you first came on, it's a good review of how it all, the composure and attendance and all these things. And they were all revisited by the Board of Aldermen just a few years back, and they all conform with each other, and they just did a good job of spelling it out in the code, the composition of each of these boards. So that's where you find yourself to learn a little bit about the board or commission you are on and what your duties may be, or how it all works, and maybe the terms and that sort of thing. Here we go. Move on. Okay, so the bread and butter of it all. Meeting notices and agendas, you're all familiar with those. They have to have the time, place, and date and a tentative agenda and be posted at least 24 hours prior. Excluding weekends and holidays means if your meeting is Monday night, it had to be posted before that time on a Friday. And if you'll notice, we hardly ever have meetings on Mondays because it is kind of a burden you don't have that day before ability if something would come up. And you may have an amended agenda, you have to add something. Well, you have up to that 24 hours as long to post that amended agenda, okay? And now the official place they're posted, as you probably know, if you're coming from the government center, is the bulletin board just inside the door. But we make them available on our website because, as I previously said, we're very committed to transparency. We want every citizen to be able to know what we're talking about at our meetings. It's our commitment to having open meetings. If it's less than 24 hours, the meeting could not be held. It has to be canceled. And just a note on public hearings, I'll be mentioning them later again. They generally have to be posted 15 days prior. There are some exceptions that are less, and there are some exceptions that are more, but they're rare. As a general rule of thumb, 15 days prior, if something's happening near your house with some of these certain boards and commissions, staff would be sending a letter to those affected within a certain number of feet, so they would know and they'd receive that and they'd be able to look on the website and see it posted there 15 days prior. And like I said, the official posting is on the bulletin board, but we add it to the website because that's more convenient for people to find it there. An item not on an agenda may be introduced for a future meeting, but no action taken. This commonly happens at the Board of Aldermen level, and it can happen at your level too. You go to the meeting and you want to talk about the police, have them talk about drones, although we already have a drone. And so you can say, next time we meet, can we talk about drones? And everyone can agree, but you can't talk about them, and you can't go down go into detail about those items because the citizens may have strong feelings and might want to come to your meeting, and other people might want to give their comment. That's why if it's not on the agenda, no action can be taken. Okay, whoops, sorry. Agendas. The city staff creates agendas using agenda management software, and it is my favorite software tool that the city owns. It is so good. It is so great. One of the things I love, like the Board of Aldermen, everything is being signed off by the city attorney in a workflow, and with some of the other boards like planning and zoning, it's going through a workflow. Things do not get to you, the members, without us knowing that you have the correct version, the version that has been approved by our city administrator, which is for all practical purposes the CEO of the organization, that it has his approval, that it has the approval of the department head if it's a meeting being run by a department head, and that more importantly, that we can track that the city attorney saw it and signed off on it if there's anything that's of a legal nature in that agenda. Okay, the chair must follow the agenda. Again, a committee you might be on in a social situation, such as a school or church, the chair may prepare the agenda and bring the agenda. That doesn't happen here. Because why? Because the public must be able to see this agenda. That's why we have the agenda software. That's why we use the agenda software to upload them to our website, as well as print out packets and prepare the information for you. And the chair must always follow the agenda. Now, at the Board of Aldermen level, this happens commonly, that for a good reason, you would want to move something up. You, as a member of a board or commission, can do that. You need a motion, someone to second that motion, and a majority vote. If you're at a meeting and a bunch of citizens have come in to talk about traffic on their street that's on the later part of the agenda, and the earlier part of the agenda for police was going to give a presentation that was lengthy, you can make a motion in a second to move that item that is on the agenda up to be heard first, to make it more convenient for those people who've come out to attend so they don't have to wait. That's perfectly acceptable because they knew it was going to be there, and then you just made it more convenient for the people attending or for other good reasons. Okay, can't vote on items not on the agenda. I believe I've emphasized that probably on several slides. Items not on the agenda may be introduced for future issues. Email. Oh, email. Okay. Don't reply all. That's just the rule. Please don't reply all. I know sometimes they go out and people say, Merry Christmas, Happy 4th of July. You're not violating any kind of law by doing that. But I think it's easy to have an accident where the agenda goes out. Maybe you have a strong feeling about something on there, and if you start sharing that strong feeling with your committee, you're having a secret meeting. And so that's kind of the message I'm trying to get across, is that you don't discuss things until you're there, where the public can watch you debate the public business. And the other thing is, don't mark it confidential. That really means nothing. Now, some of you are on boards or commissions where you may get emails from the city attorney, and they are a client and council communications, and they are protected, and they are not public information. But you can't just send an email and mark it confidential. It could still be asked for, or we could be asked to produce that email and make that email public. So just don't mark it confidential, because it doesn't carry any weight, okay, if a member does that. And then a single email about an issue does not constitute a meeting. I want to kind of touch on that, because, like, let's say you're discussing, like we're talking next week again about these green facilities that we're putting down by the quarry. Like, say if the park director was sent this out, and then someone had a question, she could send out information to everyone who's coming to that meeting about that question. The department heads and staff could send you information, and it's not discussing it, it's just sending you information, so you have additional information that might not, to support an agenda item. So that is not to worry you that about this email issue. So generally, you may see that information sent by a staff member later, because someone asked for it, and if they wanted it clarified, their chances are all of you members need the same issue clarified. So the staff member would send an email to all of you. This is kind of the last sentence here about the public computer. You don't have to worry about that too much. As long as somebody on the email chain has that at cityofcrestwood.org, our servers, our systems are picking up the email. So you don't specifically have to email me, the custodian of records, a copy. The only exception to that might be if for some odd reason your group didn't have a staff member on a group email, and I can't imagine how that would happen, then you would want to send it to me. I'm the custodian of records mentioned in the last sentence there. I can't think that'll ever come up, but it's just good knowledge to know, because the way we have things set up, we capture it all, so you don't have to worry about that too much, even though you're using your personal email. Okay, the dual roles of a chair. Right at the bottom of this screen, you see the words chair, vice chair, secretary. That's simply the hierarchy of who will chair a meeting. And I know quite often members don't want to become the secretary because they think they have to take minutes. You don't have to take minutes. There's no unusual work. And I think what's on this slide is important to every single member, because if you're on a committee or commission or board long enough, you may very well be asked to serve one of these roles. And the chair chairs the meeting, but if the chair is gone, the vice chair sets up. But if the chair and the vice chair set up, you can go ahead and have your meeting, because the person who's secretary can simply step into that role. And that's all those titles mean, is the hierarchy of who is chairing your meeting. And I urge you all to please step up when your committee needs you. The dual roles as you're chairing a meeting are, you're the presiding officer. It's your job to follow that agenda, make sure everybody's following it, and to keep order in the meeting, okay? And that's pretty straightforward, but I'll come back to it in a minute. Your other role, your dual role, is inclusion. Inclusion is to facilitate the conversation and make sure everyone gets a chance to speak. I urge you, if you are a vice chair or a secretary, to sit next to your chair and help them, especially in the chamber where we're recording. We find some of those recordings, the microphone doesn't get turned on, and then we can't hear what a commissioner or board member is saying. So if there's someone next to you who can point out who wants to speak and make sure that the light gets on the screen there in front of the chair, you just touch the screen and then that turns on that mic. So I'm asking all of you, if you're a part of it, to help make sure the chair is facilitating the discussion, not by just making sure that every member is heard, but also making sure every member is recorded. That would be of a great appreciation to anyone who wants to listen to a recording later of a meeting audio. Public comments. All of our agendas should have a place for public comments. And so we always do that and give the public a chance to speak. Let's say, for example, though, this happens sometimes in work sessions with the board where we're going to work on goals. We have public comment at the beginning, and the 2 or 3 people who are there say, well, we don't have any comments yet because we're waiting to see what you talk about. Well, you could say, if it pleases the membership, we'll let the public comments be heard again later. And everybody can just nod their head. It doesn't have to be really formal. In Robert's Rules of Order, which is basically the parliamentary procedures we're going to talk about in a bit. If someone makes a motion and someone says anything at all, that's a second, okay? And then the consensus can just be there to let someone speak later. Now, I do want to emphasize that, as I said earlier, and I'm repeating myself for the benefit of those listening later, you have been chosen because the people, the citizens, elected the elected officials chose and appointed you. So the citizens chose you to represent them. So for example, somebody has a problem in their neighborhood and they send the neighbor to talk at the meeting about the problem. That person doesn't suddenly get to come to the meeting and comment on every single thing on the agenda and participate like they're an elect person chosen, because they were not the people chosen. You are the people chosen. So, but you want to get the public comment in at the appropriate time. Now, let's say the board is meeting and somebody's out there waving their arms in the air saying, oh, they have a comment. The chair at any time should feel free to say, we have a member of the audience who really wants to make a comment, or if you're on a Zoom and they have a hand up. And you can all just have a general consensus to let this person speak. So it's not about controlling them or not controlling them. It is about keeping order, which goes back to the first role, that the chair needs to keep order and make sure that we get through the business and we don't tangent or get sidetracked by someone participating in a way that slows down the meeting or interrupts the flow of taking care of the action items on the agenda. Parliamentary procedures, also fairly commonly known as Robert's Rules of Order. The Robert's Rules of Order allows for someone to create their own rules of order, and the Board of Aldermen has done that. If you go to the code, you will see the Board of Aldermen has rules of order for business. Now, you are less formal than that. You don't have to follow the board's rules of order. Those rules of order are in their section of the code. They apply to the board. You can be less formal and comfortable. We want you to be comfortable at city meetings, but the only thing is you must follow the agenda. And I'm just going to give you a tip now, because this happens pretty often. Use postpone rather than table. And I'll tell you why. Historically, bills were written on these large rolls of paper, and they literally set them on a table. So they'd make a motion to remove them from the table. So technically, if you table something, you have to take a vote to talk about it again. And that's not what you really want to do most times. So if you use the word postpone, you can say postpone to the next meeting, postpone to a later date when staff brings it back because they have more information. You can tell staff just to bring it back when they're ready, or you can postpone indefinitely, which is a kind of way of saying go away and don't come back, okay? But try to get used to using the word postpone rather than table. Okay, minutes. Briefly on minutes. Minutes are an official record of the meeting. They just include who, where, and what. Let me tell you, when I'm reading minutes from like the 1970s, it's more like a tabloid. And I'm telling you, as someone who has to do research for something 50 years ago, you don't have to read paragraph after paragraph of personality conflicts and all this drama when you're trying to find something very important for someone who's asking for research, usually through a sunshine law request. So we keep our minutes very clean these days, as you probably noticed with all your committees and commissions. They just tell you what was done. They're not a transcript of what was said. All right, we're almost to the end of my presentation. This is from the Attorney General's website. Please take time later to go ahead and review through it. It says many interesting things, but I highlighted the two lines, the words in blue, because those are the only two things I'm going to touch on here. Closed meetings, just don't do it, okay? Don't close a meeting. If for some far unimaginable reason, one of your boards or commissions, and civil service, you're an exception to the rule, okay? But the rest of you, the city attorney would need to know, okay? And you, the chair, would not want to contact the city attorney. You would want to tell your department head would talk to the city administrator. Then if the city administrator saw fit for some extreme reason, he'd ask the city attorney, because we need to cite which statutes. But I can't imagine it's going to happen, and it could really cause legal problems to close a meeting. And never, ever, toward the end of the meeting, say, turn off the tape and let's talk about this or that, because that would be an illegal closed meeting, right? So just don't close a meeting, keep everything in the open, let everyone hear what we have to say. Number 4, emergency situations. Just thought I'd mention that in terms of, you can have a meeting with less than 24-hour notices, but that's like, the weather, a tornado, like let's say you had something very important that came and there was this huge storm, and but we needed to do this, and so we're going to hold the meeting the next day. That can be done and then noted in the minutes, but it has to really be, as it says, for a valid reason, and really weather is about the only thing that I can, some sort of disaster is about the only reason I can think of that really justifies that. Recently we had P&Z, and I applaud them. They just had a problem with this Zoom and people getting into the meeting, and they had their meeting the next week and noticed it and did everything they needed to do. So it's always best to make sure anybody from the citizenry who wants to attend is able to do so. Okay, we're going to get to the questions, but I'm going to click to the very last slide and then click back. For those who are watching later or listening later, you can be wrapped up soon. The 3 takeaways is do not reply all from the email. Just don't do that. Follow the agenda and don't add anything at the agenda, and don't vote for things that are not on the agenda. So please, those are the 3 main takeaways I hope you take with you tonight. Now I'll go back to questions, and I'll try to get this so I can see if anybody has their hands up or wants to turn their mic on. Just go ahead and ask if you have any questions about anything I presented.
Hey, Ellen, this is Angela 7.
Yes.
I do have a couple questions.
That's good. Happy to answer.
Let's see. I wrote them down. Hang on. So one was on your, I can't remember what slide it was.
Okay.
But it was about the meeting notices and agendas. It says you must have the time, date, place, and tentative agenda.
Yeah.
But on the next slide, and what you were talking about was that you have to follow the agenda and you can't add anything to the agenda. Should that really just be an agenda, period, not tentative?
No, they're 2 different things. Okay. And I'll tell you about our little friends in Illinois and how they do it. For our little friends in Illinois, what they do is they take a whole list of all the meetings that they're going to have, and they put it on a bulletin board somewhere, and they claim that's the notice, okay, for the year.
Okay.
And then they create agendas when they have meetings, okay? We don't do it that way here. Like, for example, a closed session notice for the board simply says they're a notice. Tonight, it wasn't a notice, and it said there was going to be a presentation, although I really didn't have to. This isn't discussing public business. This is educational system. But even if we're doing something that's educational, still like to notice something. You could foresee a situation where we would put out a notice that we're going to have a work session, and then we don't have things ready maybe for, like, we work so far ahead. We always have our capital improvements and all that ready to rock and roll, because we get our board agendas a week in advance of the meeting. But I would say we're unusual in that we do that here at the City of Crestwood, okay? But at least for the Board of Aldermen, we get them a week in advance. So let's say you knew you were going to have a meeting in June and you wanted everybody to know about it. Something big, or talking about the community center at right now. You might go ahead and notice it. Notice the meeting. And the notice would say that's going to happen in this and that date, okay? And then when we get to the agenda, it would have the actual items. It might have a general, so you could call it an amended agenda, but you see notices and you see agendas, and a notice for example, for the board's closed session doesn't really give you much detail. It just tells you under which statutes they'll be talking about things. I haven't had meetings for the board that are kind of a mixed bag of tricks, where we have some things that are like spelled out, like we've taken a vote and then we go into a closed session, so it was all on one combined document. It kind of can be perceived the same thing, but it isn't necessarily the same thing. And in most states, isn't considered the same thing, because a public hearing notice is a notice.
Well, I'm asking more about the agendas, a tentative agenda versus an actual agenda.
Agendas are pretty much always tentative. Now, we don't do the approval of the agenda. Like if you look at other cities, they will actually take a vote to approve the agenda once they're at the meeting. We don't do that stuff.
Oh, okay. Now that helps. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and even like when my city clerk group, we approve the agenda at the beginning of the meeting. We just don't do that. I mean, for us, 24 hours out, that's it.
And going back to, now going to the 24 hours, about my other question was your part about is actually in the email section where someone emails something that they want they want the information out accessible to the meeting before. But that part never gets into the public's hands, right? Because it's not part of the agenda, or it's not part of the packet that gets posted. Is that true, or is there a way that information can also be part that the public reads beforehand, before the meeting? Does that make sense? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. Okay, like that, what you would call enhancement or clarification on an item. No, it wouldn't go to the public, because it goes back to that circle I talked about, where the citizens told the elected officials that they wanted them to lead by their vote. And those elected officials chose you, the committee members, by appointing you. So therefore, the citizens can come because they have to know the agenda topics. Okay, if you had a question about something that was there, it should come up during the meeting. Okay, because it'd probably be like a technical detail, right? It will be something that you, the decision maker, needs to know.
Okay.
If it was something the public needed to know, it would be added. But it's more things that I'm talking about that the decision maker, you, the committee member, need to know.
So things being added in that same paragraph, it said stuff about things being added to the public record. That's only the public record after the fact of the meeting.
No, it's always sunshineable. It's always sunshineable. That's why I said don't be marking something confidential. It's always
right. No, I wasn't talking about that, but
if
sending something out that you wanted part of the public record because it's going to be discussed at the meeting, and you send it out ahead of time.
The BOA. Okay, I have people who want something to be attached, like public comment, and they send it to me ahead. And
but other public can't see that until they go to the meeting.
Yeah.
That's what my question is. That stuff, does that ever get pre-posted?
No.
As part of the packet?
No, because it doesn't really happen until you're in the meeting.
Okay.
And it could happen a number of ways. Like let's say Danny, the city planner, has emails that he got about a certain things. He would read them aloud and make them part, and make sure the decision makers had them, because at that time, or an alderman could read a letter from someone, or a person who was actually there. So that is action that happens at the meeting, because that's input from the public, which we want. But the information, for the most part, is you're still the decision makers. And I
Okay.
doubt, that, if a person has things that are going to influence a decision, they could, during that, say, please don't make that decision tonight. Make it a subsequent meeting. So, more people can find out what I'm bringing to light or something along those
Okay.
lines. Thank goodness we
Okay.
don't have anything that controversial, because we try to be transparent at all times. Those
No,
are
and
good
it was
questions.
just, those were questions based on the
No, they're
slides that
great
you,
questions. No, they really are. I have to think a little, but yeah, they make sense to me.
Helen, I do have another one, because
Okay.
I'm thinking of a recent meeting that we had.
Mhm.
When we go read about our part of the city code that talks about specifically about our meeting, that's where it indicates the number that makes a quorum, correct?
Yeah,
For each of these
it's
committees, but it's
it's
usually
always half plus one, according
half
to
plus one.
Robert's Rules of Order. That's
In
what it says.
voting, and this might only apply, because I'm on the planning and zoning, and because it's a decision-making body, maybe it only applies to my committee and the other decision-making one,
The board has
about
special rules, remember?
about
The board has
voting,
special rules.
the number of people that are there that make a quorum. But then when you have votes about, about postponing something, is it the number that people are present, or is it
Robert's rules would say yes.
it's the number of
Robert's
people?
rules would say yes. But I'll tell you what, if you're on one of those review boards, you have an attorney present.
We didn't.
just like-
That was the last couple meetings, we haven't had an attorney present. So
Oh.
that's why we were kind of a little confused and we were unsure. So
No,
that's
no,
a bigger question for us. And
No, because I would say if you were voting on a specific thing, it might be in chapter 26. So if you're on
okay.
Board of Adjustment or Planning and Zoning, I would say you read chapter 26 to really
Okay.
brush up on, but just to postpone, it would be the majority of those present, not
Okay.
the majority of members elected. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Heidi Klosterman. I'm on the
Hi.
same board with Angela.
Uh-huh.
And we have not had, since I've joined, that I can recall, an attorney present, which is different than when I sat on the Board of Adjustments. So should P&Z be having an attorney present? And if so, is there a reason why we have not been having one present for our meetings?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. I do know at some meetings they were, and so I can't answer that. I'm sorry. No.
Is there somebody that
I mean,
should ask?
yeah. I mean, we could ask the city administrator. I
Okay.
would tend to think it has something to do with, what's before the board. I mean, I may have thought that because of so many things we did for the mall development for all that time. I mean, was there, how long have you been on?
A year, I think.
A year.
Coming up on a year. So I was mostly post-mall
Post mall, yeah.
most of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe the code calls for it, because the code calls for that board in particular has state laws that regulate those who can participate, in that. I mean, you guys are probably have the most specific membership of anything, but like I said, that's a pretty simple Robert's Rules of Order. It's the majority present for something like a postpone, which is simply a basic motion. Mhm.
No, she was still asking about the attorney being
Yeah,
present.
but like I
for
said, I
ours.
can't, it costs us
Yeah.
money to have attorney there. So, I would
Right.
imagine that it's partly if it's needed. I mean, like I said, they have reviewed in detail everything that it's come to you through that software before it gets to you. So,
Okay, so if I
some of our-
email the city
Go ahead.
administrator, that won't be a public record, will it? Asking-
yeah.
asking
I mean,
we
yeah,
need an attorney.
it is. You can pretty much ask for any record you want. If you want the email that Klosterman sends Simpson,
But it
you
won't
can
be a
ask for
meeting.
those
It won't be
emails.
considered a meeting, right? As long as I
What?
don't CC everybody on the P&Z, right?
Well, even if you did, you would be asking a technical question. You wouldn't be discussing public business.
No, yeah,
No.
this is.
But
this-
I would tend to think that they would provide one if one was needed, but they're not going to provide a attorney to be a parliamentarian. You know, on
Will-
the other hand, we can
Right.
definitely help chairs. I mean, we talked about this last year, having some sort of training for chairs to help the chairs, you know, just know a little bit more. But that's kind of where we're covering the basics tonight. And a lot of what I'm pointing you towards is kind of resources. You know, like if you can get a quick Robert's Rules of Order, list for the basic motions off you can Google that, print one.
Okay.
Mhm.
It might not be a bad idea to offer something similar to this, a
Mhm.
short, quick hit,
Yeah,
just
well,
for
the main thing is,
parliamentary procedures.
yeah, and I'm not an expert. I mean, there are people who are absolute experts because
Yeah.
and like everything legal, you know, like lawyers disagree, you know, sometimes people who disagree and argue about parliamentary, you know, I mean, but like at the Board of Aldermen, the attorney is sitting at the left hand of the mayor and they are the official parliamentarian. And sometimes we're like signaling each other like, hey, yeah, or what, you know, because it gets really complicated when people like make an amendment and somebody amends the amendment and we're having to roll back after all these discussions and follow, you know, where do
Right.
we begin and where do we end? So, but like I said, it's cost. I mean, like, that's like, if you have something, usually it's good to ask your department head. And in your case, you have the city planner. But that's always a good place to ask a question about your commission or your board. And then if they have to take it, then they will take it to Chris, to the city administrator. Because if, you know, like we're preparing for the Board of Aldermen meetings, we have a city attorney on a retainer. So like they'll show us the bill and they'll show us how much it would have been and then how much less we had to pay because we have them on a retainer. Well, odd little questions aren't on the retainer. So that's why everybody and their brother just can't write the city attorney and ask them, hey, you know, this is what we want to know. So that's why we always have the hierarchy of making sure if we know the answer, we'll tell you. And like I said, I don't know the answer, but I'm thinking it just isn't a necessary cost because they know what's happening and the level of actual expertise on the subject matter. You have those people appointed to that committee. Even though I
Okay, well, thank you.
apologize that the postpone thing threw you for a loop because that, you know, and like I said, it's a good question. It's good to know. Mhm.
Thank you.
Anybody else? If not, again, I thank you for your time tonight. I thank you for being here with me live to make this recording for the benefit of those who watch it later and those who will someday serve. Mhm.